Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Keys History and Discovery Center's newest virtual program, Community Views. I'm Erin Muir, Membership and Events Manager at the Keys History and Discovery Center, and I'm filling in for Executive Director Jill Miranda Baker. Jill's daughter graduates high school this evening, and their family is participating in the virtual ceremony. While we miss seeing everyone, we are so appreciative of your engagement with us through this virtual platform, and we look forward to seeing you all again in June when the museum reopens. Be on the lookout for an announcement outlining our reopening plans soon. When our museum first closed its doors, the team here at the Discovery Center dove headfirst into digital programming. For the full slate of our program offerings and registration links, visit keysdiscovery.com/virtual programs. These virtual programs have been so well received that they will continue even after the museum reopens, albeit with some modifications to the schedule. Typically, our programs are offered to our members for free as a benefit of their membership, and non-members pay a fee to participate. During the pandemic, we've offered our lectures and other new evening programs like this to all, free of charge. If you are not a member and in a position to do so, please consider making a donation through our website, keysdiscovery.com/support. Every small and medium and large donation is greatly appreciated and supports the continuation of lectures and all of the new virtual programming that is helping us share our mission both here in our community and across the virtual world. Or better yet, become a Keys History and Discovery Center member, taking advantage of our ongoing spring membership drive, and future in-person and virtual programs will be included in your membership. Annual memberships start at just $65, and you can join today at keysdiscovery.com/membership. Now for some GoToWebinar housekeeping items. You should all see the GoToWebinar viewer, which contains both the presentation slides and the webcam view. If you're on a computer, this is to the left of your screen. If you are viewing on an iPhone, you will need to swipe left and right to switch between the presentation and the presenter. On your computer, the control panel is located to the right. If your control panel collapses, the orange arrow allows you to expand it again. On a tablet or phone, the control features are at the top or top and bottom. The questions panel is another important function, which this slide shows you how to locate. Let's do a quick practice with this feature. I'm sending you a question now. Let's send this. Asking you to please reply with the number of people, including yourself, watching from your device this evening. Questions will be taken differently than you may have experienced during our lecture presentations. If you have a question that is specific to a photo that is being shown, please type that question into the questions panel, and I will do my best to read those to Brad as they come in. If you have a more general question, we ask that you hold those until the question and answer segment at the end. Before the start of this segment, we will review the Raise Your Hand feature, which will allow you to speak your question. And we will review how to do that before the start of the Q&A segment. If you happen to experience a decrease in bandwidth during the program, you can choose to watch just the webcam view or just the slide presentation view. Your audio continues with either screen. Tonight, we are pleased to have the Discovery Center's own curator, Brad Bertelli, presenting. Brad joined Keys History and Discovery Center upon its inception in 2013. He earned a master's degree of fine arts and creative writing from the University of Miami in 2001. Upon moving to the Keys, he quickly embraced the unique and expansive history of the Upper Keys. He's a published author of 4 books about the Keys, plus 2 on the Netflix TV series Bloodline. Brad, welcome.
All right, so today we're gonna our first community views presentation. I thought I'd start with Tavernier, and turns out this is going to be a 2-parter. So this first installment is going to be kind of from the inception of the community of Tavernier around 1907, 1908 in that area, to about 1940. And then at a later date, when we do another one of these, I'll bring in a second version of Tavernier from 1940 to modern times, essentially. All right, so what we're going to start with first is the name Tavernier. One of the first things you often hear about, with the history of the name of Tavernier is people say, where did Tavernier get its name from? Oh, a sailor came on the shore and said, hey, is there a tavern near here? And the picture in the background, or in the background, you can see the island sticking out, and that's Tavernier Key. And that is the namesake for the community of Tavernier. And Tavernier Key is actually one of the oldest place names in the Florida Keys. Its original name is a variation of Cayo Tibano, which actually translates from the Spanish to horsefly key. So Tavernier Key is actually horsefly key. If you've ever been out there, has a good history of those pesky critters getting onto your skin. So kind of the evolution of the name of Tavernier, while the name Cayo Tibano dates back to the 1600s. What's interesting about the name Tibano is it's spelled T-A-B-A-N-O, but in Spanish, the letter B is pronounced with a V. So it's actually Cayo Tibano. And you can see in 1742, it appears as Cayo Tibano. In 1763, Cayo de Tibanos. And then as more English versions come in 1774, we have Key Tibano. And then 1775, the first time that the word Key Tavernier shows up on a chart. It's also, and it has two names, Cayo Tibano and Key Tavernier. Kind of similarly with Indian Key, 1775 was also on this chart, was the first time that Indian Key showed up on a chart. And it also had the Bahamian name, Cape Comfort, the Spanish name, Cayuela de Matanza, or some version of that, and then also Indian Key, but that's a different story. So 1775, the place name Key Tavernier shows up, and then there are a couple variations throughout the years, but from that point forward, basically, it becomes Key Tavernier. And then we have Henry Flagler comes to town, and he begins building his railroad from the mainland to Key West. And this image is from March 1907, and it's a picture of Tavernier Creek. And this is the Flagler Special. That's actually, I believe, Henry Flagler back here. This is his personal rail car. And this is him checking out the water at Tavernier Key, or Tavernier Creek. And with Flagler really comes the first time that the place named Tavernier moves away from Key Tavernier, the island offshore, and onto Key Largo. About 1907, 1908, the railroad depots in the Upper Keys began to get established, and the depot in the southern portion of Key Largo becomes known as the Tavernier Depot. Now, while rail service to Key West the train doesn't reach Key West until 1912, by 1908 there is daily train service from Miami to Knights Key at the foot of the 7-mile bridge. And so as early as 1908, we have daily rail service here in the Tavernier area. And these first few pictures are just kind of the older pictures that we have access to. This is the one-room Tavernier school. No air conditioning, not a lot of windows in that building. Everyone's kind of dressed in long clothes. I know the teacher is Elise Warren. I don't know any of the kids. I'm not sure what the date is on this picture. It is either, but it's a pretty cool little picture. And from there, we're going to jump to the Rodney Albury house. And what's important about this house and this slide in this particular place of the presentation is that Tavernier is really a reconfiguring of the community of Planter, which was the original community here in the southern tip of Key Largo. And that community of Planter was largely in the area of Harry Harris Park and Ocean Point Suites, and also You know, it was founded in the 1880s, was a planting community. In those days, before the railroad, it was all sailing ships. So the community was on the edge of the island, where the ships could have access to. And as the train became part of daily business in the Upper Keys, specifically on Key Largo for this instance, the community of Planter began to move closer to the railroad and the conveniences of the railroad, where it was bringing ice and mail and and coffee and flour and dry goods and the goods necessary to make living a little more comfortable. But what's cool about this house is the house Rodney Albury, who was Aaron's great grandfather, by the way, was actually in Planter originally. It was built in Planter, and Mr. Albury lived in it in Planter, and then about 1919 broke down the building kind of piece by piece, loaded it onto his boat, and brought it to the Tavernier area in the area of Old Settlers Park, which is Old Settlers Park today, and rebuilt it there. And so this is kind of a transitional period between the community of Planter and the community of Tavernier. Now I just love this picture. This is also Captain Albury, about 1942. A couple of years ago, Dwayne Plageman sent me a series of photos. His father was living in Tavernier area in the 1940s, and this is Dwayne, Tiny, and Dwayne brothers. And Captain Albury would take them out fishing sometimes, because from all accounts, every story, everything you hear about Rodney Albury is what a nice gentleman that he was. And I just love that picture. All right, so this picture is from the McKenzie family, and they will play a significant role in development of Tavernier as a community. But what's cool about this picture is this is the Tavernier Post Office. It was built in 1926, and that building actually still stands. I think it's a hair salon right now, about mile marker 91.5 area. But this was actually the second post office. The first post office opened, I believe, in 1911, and then this became the second post office for Tavernier. And this is another of the McKenzie family images. And what's cool about this image, and here is the post office building, and we can see the telegraph lines here. And then this is the railroad track, which is now the southbound lane of the Overseas Highway. This is the old highway, original Overseas Highway. And then we see these two gentlemen here are standing in kind of a little road that's leading to the railroad tracks. And that is that road, that's this road right here. So the post office is kind of right this, you can see a little shadow right here. And here's the road to the Tavernier Depot, established in 1908. And this is a packing house, because again, this was Tavernier, like Planter. The Upper Keys were largely farming communities back in those days. See a lot of crates over here. And you wanted the packing house close to the railroad, so it's easier to put on the railroad cars to take up going back north. And these are just some buildings. I'm not sure what they are right now, but the train. This is the only picture we have of the train depot, and it's kind of raised. You can see it's kind of raised, so when the train would come by, there wouldn't be a big drop off here between that. So we have the old highway here. A couple of gentlemen are walking down the road. And from there, we are going to go to kind of the more commercial development of Tavernier, which happened with a man named Oliver Woods, who was from Chicago, who was lured down to South Florida during the land boom. And he was a real estate agent and a land developer. He came down to the Key Largo area and bought property in Key Largo and on Plantation Key that had fallen into default. And so he picked up a lot of property for a pretty cheap price. And he began to really develop the Tavernier area, both commercially and also a little more residentially. And this is some of the Lamboom salesmen. We see the Tavernier area here kind of marked off in Key Largo. Now, Oliver Woods brought two really important details to the Tavernier community. He established an ice house, which you see on my right here, which again is right. You can see the telegraph poles. So the railroad tracks are right there. This is the old highway, and the ice house. So very close to the trains. When the train would come down, it could offload the ice, and then people could come pick up ice here, or it could be delivered. And then we also, is that a question? All right, 1 second, and I'll get to that question.
Yes, Brad. Sarah would like to know, what did they grow and pack in the packing house for rail shipment?
It's a surprisingly long list of produce, fruits and vegetables that were grown in the area. Pineapples, tomatoes, melons, cucumbers, onions, oranges, grapefruit, limes, which we call key limes today, but in those days they were just limes. So it was really a surprising amount of produce being grown in the area. All right. And the other important thing that Oliver Woods did was he convinced Standard Oil to build bulk oil tanks. Tanks is the word I'm looking for. Thank you very much. Bulk oil tanks in the area. And also you can see here we have the gas station that's developing. That's already there. And let's go to the next slide. And here we have, again, there's the railroad. This structure here, I'm not sure what it is. I think this might be one of the bulk oil containers. There's later, we'll see some images that are taken from height, looking down on the Tavernier area, and they are taken from this area here, because we can see this area in the image, and I'll show it in a minute. And I'm not sure if the bulk, if this was the first of the oil tanks, because the gas pumps are right here, so right across the street or road, not a street really in those days. But I'll show you more about that in a couple more slides, and we'll also talk more about these buildings that are popping up on the far side of the highway. Now, McKenzie, or this is another McKenzie family photograph, but this is one of my favorite slides. Oliver Woods was also a land developer, and he and this is today. This is Cafe Mocha today. The Tavernier Hotel would be built. Hasn't been built yet. Would be built right in this area here, and this subdivision back here, Oliver Woods decided to call Ollywood as a little self-promotion for himself. I just love that word. Love that name. So this would be the Ollywood subdivision. All right, and this is another one of those McKenzie family images. And these two houses back here, we're going to see a lot. We'll see a frontal view in several slides away from here. And but let's look at this house right here. Now, again, no air conditioning. We're building, kind of on the water's edge to use the ocean breezes as a means of both pest control and as a cooling agent. And we can see all of the windows that are on this house here. It's also built up on a little piers with the steps leading up. But what's really cool is you look at the gutter system coming off. There's an echo over here with my speakers. So all right, so we have fresh water was also an issue in those days. So the homes would have cisterns, and we have two cisterns in this image. We have a large cistern here, and then a smaller kind of round cistern here. And if you saw our field trip Friday, or last Friday when we visited the Reef building, which was originally built about 1912 by Beauregard Albury, they have these two similar cisterns. I gotta turn this down. I can't stand here now. All right, these two cisterns, and this round one here has been Jerry Wilkinson and the Historic Preservation Society of the Upper Keys rebuilt the wood portion of the cistern at the Reef House up in Mount Orford 98. But this is also another, you can see it, and you can see that the reef, that the roof is peaked, a peaked roof, and with the so the rain would run off into these gutters, and the gutter rails would run off and empty out into on this side into the cisterns to collect rainwater.
Brad, we have a question from Marie DeLuca.
Yes, Marie.
Marie says there is Tavernier Creek, which separates Tavernier from Plantation Key. Was there ocean water ever separating Tavernier from Key Largo?
Well,
was it filled in to
No.
create US 1?
And they can hear you, right? So I'll have to repeat the question. Okay. So no, Key Largo is the largest of the islands, largest of the keys, has always been one large key. There's never been any fill. So Tavernier was just kind of the southern, and Plancha just kind of the southern tip of Key Largo. That is not the same for, let's say, Windley Key, which is 2 islands down, which was at one point 2 islands, and during railroad construction, they did fill in some of it to make it one piece. But for as far as Tavernier and Key Largo, it was always just one large island. All right, so now this is Joanne McKenzie, and the McKenzie, yes.
Before we move away from cisterns, do we know how many gallons those cisterns held?
As far as how many gallons, how much water was held, they're all of different sizes. A lot of them are different. You can still see some cisterns in the ruins, like in the Harry Harris Park area. There's a couple off in the woods, and there are some cisterns on some of the old properties, and they're not of one size. Like this one back here that we see looks like it's a pretty large cistern. I think the one we saw at the Reef Building on Friday looked a little smaller than this. That's a pretty large house, but they weren't all. There was no, they were built, kind of for the house and for the family. So I think they were all kind of a different size. Yes, Aaron.
And one more question from Elaine Schulberg. She would like to know about how many families lived in Tavernier in the time frame we're looking at.
In the time frame we're looking at, I don't know for sure. I want to say, Elaine, I don't know the number, so I don't want to make up a number, and I will get to that, I think, a little bit in a couple more slides, which is probably a decade away from where we are now. I think we're in the 1920s now, kind of in the 1930s. I know, I don't know. I don't want to make up a number, but I will look that up and try to do some research and find out how many more, or how many, kind of give a more approximate number. All right, so let's move on to the McKenzie family. And this is Joanne McKenzie as a small girl. This is 1928. She had just moved down here with her family. We see the Standard Oil, the gas pumps in the background, and we see this building over here, which is the Albury's Better Food Store. And what's important about the McKenzie family is, let's see, who's next. So here's all right. So this is this shows this building here, which is the Albury's Better Food Store. And then this is another kind of a frontal picture of it, which we can see. Now, all right, and then we have, let me go forward real quick. All right, so this is these are the McKenzies, and that's Joanne in the middle. This is Hugh McKenzie, better known as Mac, and his wife Hazel. Hugh was a school teacher up in the Miami area, and he and Hazel would marry around 1927, 1928, and they would move down to the Tavernier area. And Hugh would partner with O.M. Woods, with Oliver Woods, and become partners in the Standard Oil development and also kind of a development partner. And Oliver Woods was the agent for Standard Oil. He was given that title until his death, and he would pass away. He would be traveling with his wife in his car in Miami down Ponce de Leon Avenue. He would suffer a heart attack while driving at the wheel and die in the car. He would pull over and so they didn't crash. But at that point, Mr. McKenzie, Mac, would take control of the Standard Oil lease, and so that's and they would be and Mac would continue the commercial development of Tavernier, and we will kind of go into a lot of his stuff here pretty soon. I'm going to backtrack here for a second. Now, I pointed out these two houses previously, and we'll see another front picture of them in a minute. And this is Tavernier Key in the background. And this is the original version of the tavern store, which would get torn down and moved over a little bit. But this building here is the Tavernier or Tavern Tea Room. I go back and forth because the sign here says the Tavern Tea Room and the sign here says Tavernier Tea Room. But this would be Hugh's first job. He would end up managing the Tavern Tea Room. And this was during Prohibition. And if something was called a tea room during Prohibition, that was kind of code for them serving liquor, serving beverages that were stronger than the law would allow. And this would be kind of Hugh's or kind of Mac's introduction to the Tavernier area. And you can see here it's easier to see Tavernier. But so we have the family here, the Tavernier Tea Room, and then these are the two houses that kind of I've been talking about. This is an old postcard. This is the Roy Tracy and the Dimmick house. You can see from the front, kind of your typical conch style houses on the edge of the water to collect those ocean breezes. Lots of windows, open spaces for the breezes to come through, and also some screens here to keep some of those bugs at bay. And also still we have the long dock going out because this is very shallow water, and you want those long docks to go out to deeper water where the boats could have deeper access. All right, and here we have this is dated December 28, 1930. We have Mac here with Joanne and I don't know, Amberjack Snapper. I'm not sure what that is, but we have the ice house here, and across the way we have the Better Food store over here, and we have the gas station is in this area here. So again, the ice store is across the gas station at this point. Now we're getting some pictures that are a little more easy to kind of see the development of the Tavernier area. And that first tavern store that I pointed out, it's been torn down. And now we have this new building, which you'll recognize today as Cafe Mocha. But if you look at the name on top of it, this is a movie theater. This is the Key Theater. And then we have the gas station. And then we have this building here, which was formerly the Tavernier Tea Room, which becomes a restaurant that we'll go into in a little bit later. And then we have a new, bigger and better, improved, better food store in this building here. We have a water tank in the back. And we also have, we have a kind of a telephone poles back here, but not for telephone. This is gonna be linked to electricity, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit because we're getting into the time now where electricity begins to come or will be coming to this area. But again, this is this picture is taken from atop the Standard Oil bulk tanks, and we've seen this yard before. And just over here was the tank, the round cylinder tank that I was talking about. And somewhere in this yard, we have the larger Standard Oil bulk tanks here. Now, this is the first Standard Oil truck that we have, where the truck could come. It's 1932. I think this is Ralph Gillespie right here, where the truck would come to the tank, would fill up, and then that truck would go to each house to help, to bring the oil to the houses to help run their generators and other things. But also, I'm not sure if this is. I know the oil goes here, but I know some of the trucks would also haul ice to the homes, and so that's what this feature may be, to hold ice. I'm not positive, but we'll talk the importance of bringing ice to each house in a few minutes when we introduce Harry Harris. This is just kind of a cool picture, 1934, of some of the kids at the school. We have Joanne McKenzie right here. Everett Albury right here, who just celebrated his 92nd birthday 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago. And then, so in 1935, this familiar building goes under construction. And what we recognize that more commonly as the Tavernier Hotel, it was not built as a hotel, rather it was built as a movie theater, a bigger movie theater. And this is 1935. This says First Aid Station right here. But what would happen in 1935 that would kind of halt construction or delay construction on this would be the arrival on September 2nd of the Labor Day hurricane, which was like a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane that would decimate the Matacumbis, Long Key and Matacumbi, and the Islamorada, the Matacumbi community in Islamorada, which was in those days Upper Matacumbi Key. But while it did a lot of destruction in Tavernier, not nearly just the wiping away of every house basically on 10 miles away in the on Upper Matacumbi Key. And so here we see some of the damage done by the hurricane. We are looking north. I'm sorry, yeah, we're looking north on the old highway. So we have, this would be in the area of what was the Tavernier Tea Room. We see the top of the building for the what's under construction as the new theater for Tavernier. And this is the depot area. The depot is this is the decking for the Tavernier depot. So that's been totally demolished. The packing house is gone. A lot of these homes and buildings have been pushed by the tidal surge, and so kind of crashing into each other. Then here's a view from the railroad track. All these houses kind of pushed up against the tracks. And then, so we have, this is the automobile bridge that crosses Tavernier Creek. We have Flagler's bridges that were, more solid construction. And then we had these wooden bridges that would parallel, especially the upper keys, parallel the railroad tracks. And this is actually a postcard. We have some people up here walking on the bridge. It says fishing at Tavernier Creek. But there's also, a lot of people ask questions about what happened to the old automobile bridges. And after the 1935 hurricane, when the railroad tracks are destroyed or 40 miles of the railroad tracks are destroyed, but the bridges who have been built, kind of by very structurally sound, for all intents and purposes, survived the hurricane. And the state's bankrupt. This is the Great Depression. The county's bankrupt. The FEC, the Florida East Coast Railroad, is bankrupt, and they can't rebuild the railroad and finish and build more automobile roads. So they incorporate the old railroad bridges they kind of widen them so they can accommodate automobile traffic. So this, yeah. All right, so this is about 1937. We have what's now become the Tavernier Tea Room has now become Harry's Place, which is right here. We have turtle steak being advertised and seafood, and we'll come back to more pictures of this image, this structure in a little bit. We have the movie theater, and we have this little bench right here, which I believe was called the Liar's Bench. Aaron, is that what they called it?
I think so.
Yeah, where people would gather and kind of tell their stories there. And we also have we see the gas station here, and this area has really become, and McKenzie has developed this building here. It was built by Alonzo Cothran, but so Hugh McKenzie Mac is beginning to more commercially develop this area. And also, well, yeah, another thing that Mac does is he brings electricity to the area. And this is the first electricity in Key Largo. This is the first electricity available in this community of Tavernier, which is a very tight community. The electricity, this is the picture of the first generator. There is a small building that's kind of back behind what's Cafe Mocha now. First it was the theater, then it becomes the tavern store. And this is where the generators the turbines are kept, and we see all the wires coming out of it. And the electricity was not like today where you flip on your switch, and it's convenient at all hours whenever you wanted it. It was very limited. First off, it was only the houses that were wired up really stretched from like mile marker 92, which is like Coconut Row, which is right across from Mariners Hospital, down to about mile marker 91.5, which is the Driftwood Trailer Park today. And electricity was available from 5 in the morning to 10 a.m. and then again from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. kind of the peak usage hours for home life. And then on Saturdays it would run until midnight or so. So we couldn't have there really couldn't be refrigerators to store your food because there was not enough electricity to maintain that for 24 hours. So ice boxes were still important. And again, we see this is about 1937 where we see the telephone lines, telephone poles with these. There'll be a better picture pretty soon, kind of showing the telephone lines. There's one more back here, kind of running back to this, and this is where this is the tavern store, and the generator would be right back in this building right here. And we can see this coming up on top, and then the lines will be running north and south. There's also running back in what was kind of Hollywood back in those days. But what's kind of neat about this, and we'll see a better picture soon, is that now we've kind of got a more developed commercial part of Tavernier. We have a movie theater, a gas station. There's an auto parts store and a garage. We have the tavern store here, and also to the left here is the Better Food store. So this is one of the very first strip malls, kind of along the Overseas Highway, where you could stop and get a lot of shopping done at one time. Now here's kind of a clearer, better picture of that, and we see all the lines for electricity running around. We have the Standard Oil building, and just in the last few years, this building has been for a long time it was kind of hidden and run down. They've kind of re-established it, painted a nice yellow color. And then we have these three gentlemen. Ralph Gillespie, who we saw earlier with the Standard Oil truck, which is right back here on the door that says McKenzie Petroleum, Tavernier, Florida. And then we have Dick Bland. And then we saw Captain Rodney Albury, Aaron's great-grandfather. And then we have Louis Pellissier, who is Aaron's other great-grandfather. So we have Herbert. What? What? What'd you say?
I said I'm well represented in
Yes.
your presentation. Thank you, Brad.
Yes. So she goes, her family goes very far back. But we have the tavern store here. And so we have these oil trucks that are going to houses and delivering some of this fuel for the households. Here's a kind of an even clearer image, a water tower back here with a better food store, really cool old cars, the telephone lines, and we see the telephone poles in the back here, which also are running electricity. Here is where the electricity is coming from right here. We have turtle steak available at Harry's Place here, Wagner beer, so we're being advertised. We're well out of prohibition. And we see this building here is still the theater. You can tell because there's no windows on the second floor. Now, this kind of brings us to Harry Harris, who was an interesting part of Tavernier, Monroe County history. Harry Harris would first be drawn to the Florida Keys after his sister, Mabel Harris, would purchase the Key Inn from Ed and Fern Butters in North Key Largo. Here, Mabel Harris was from Chicago, came down, she purchased the Key Inn, and this was again about 1931, at the tail end of Prohibition. And while she also offered, it was a hotel and motel that had been developed by the Butters, so still offered warm beds and a nice restaurant and food, but also offered some gambling, some alcoholic beverages, and also some female companionship, if that was desired. But she also sent a letter home to Chicago asking for some help running her business. And her brother, Harry Harris, would come down and help her out for a while before moving down to the Tavernier area. Now, Harry Harris would begin working for McKenzie, and he would drive one of the Standard Oil trucks to delivering oil to people's houses, but the truck that he would drive also had an ice compartment so he'd deliver ice to the families as well. So in this way, Harry Harris was able to really interact with a lot of the community and shake hands and gets to know a lot of people. So when he ran for county commission, he was elected county commissioner in 1942. But in the meantime, he would also open Harry's Place, which is formerly the Tavernier Tea Room, and we see, which is right next door to the theater. And this building still stands today. It's a aqua blue building that's for sale. But it's 1937-ish, so you have beer and wine, key lime pies being advertised, broiled Florida lobster. And for the longest time, I don't know, like 10 years, I thought they offered ceviche, because it says right here, try our raw fish salad. And then Aaron pointed out to me one day that it's not raw fish salad. This gentleman is standing in front of the sea, so that's actually crawfish salad. But we have green turtle steaks being advertised, Wagner beer, both the Daily Double and the lager. And then we have kind of some pictures around 1941 from the inside of Harry's Place. I know a lot of people don't recognize this portion of Harry's Place. His building would move across the street to kind of where the electric co-op is today. And this is kind of the more familiar version of Harry's Place that people recognize. And all right, so after the 1935 hurricane, an effort was built because of the destruction, and an effort was built to create storm shelters for the community. And two of these were built in the Upper Keys. And these two buildings, there was two of these identical buildings built. This is the Tavernier Grammar School, also serving as a storm shelter. There was also a identical building built on Upper Matecumbe Key known as the Matacumby Grammar School, and that also served as the school, but also served as a storm shelter. So during a tremendous storm, the community would have some secure place to go. Both these buildings were built in much of the same style as the Red Cross or Hurricane houses. They're elevated. They are 18 inches of reinforced concrete, reinforced with rebar. So they're very sound. And today the Matacumby Grammar School is now the Alamorada Library, and this Tavernier Grammar School is home to the health department. Or was, yes. And here's just kind of a picture of some of the kids out in front of the school, probably 1938, 1939 area. I'm sure Joanne McKenzie is in this area somewhere. And then we have Mac McKenzie, and this is Johnny McKenzie, Joanne's younger brother. We have the automobile, the gas station here. And then we have, this is the theater. And the theater was not hugely successful, so they decided to convert it to something more commercially viable, and they made it into the Tavernier Hotel. So you can see they're putting windows along the first and second floor. And then it becomes a more recognizable Tavernier Hotel. Now, I'm going to end with this, this book, It Had to Be You, which was written by Kay Wilkinson, as well as a lot of her friends who settled in the Planter area in the early 1930s with her husband, Jack. And the book, which we have a copy of here, was, what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you. Reprinted it about 6 months ago, and it's available online at Amazon or at the museum. But it's filled with great firsthand accounts of life in Tavernier, life growing up in Planter in the 1930s and 1940s, and lots of really great firsthand accounts of growing up, of what it was like to live in the Tavernier area. So if you want to get some more information, it's a great read. It's a lot of fun. It's a great peek kind of into what was a very different place to live back in those days. All right, so that's I think now Erin's going to take over, and she's going to give directions on how to interact with some questions.
All right, thank you, Brad, for that wonderful presentation. Before we open it up for questions, let's quickly review the raise hand button. By clicking this button, I will be able to see your raised hand and will call on you to ask your question. When I call on you, I will unmute your microphone, and you should get a notification that says something along the lines of, the organizer has unmuted you. Would you like to unmute? You select yes. If you don't see this notification, you can always check your mute status by looking at your microphone button. If there's a slash line through it, you are muted, or it's red on many devices. A microphone with no slash and green on many devices means your mic is on for everyone to hear. If someone else asks your question, or you change your mind about asking your question, hit your raise hand button again, and it will lower your virtual hand. Or you can always type in your question in the questions panel like we reviewed at the start of the webinar, and I will read your question to Brad. All right, let's give this a shot, and I'm going to kick it off with a question that was submitted while the presentation was going on from Carolyn Whiteman. Carolyn asks, what do you know about the Conch House just across the entrance to Mariners Hospital Oceanside? It's the two-story building with the blue shutters. Suzanne Butterstein here used to be in what I know for. They were told it was a 1919 or so packing house.
That's the Geiger packing house. Yes, and that is on Coconut Road there. So that was kind of the end of where the electricity ran. And in those days, if you were at the packing house from there down to the ocean, I believe it was oranges, like a lot of citrus groves that were down there. So that was definitely a packing house by the Geiger family, owned by the Geiger.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go to Ellen Eisch right now. Ellen has her hand raised. So Ellen, I've unmuted you. If you would unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Brad, thanks for sharing the photos. The Woods, I know Janet and Tom Woods. Are they part of the original Woods family that you're talking about?
They are Wood.
Oh,
No
okay.
S.
Okay.
And Oliver Woods was an S, so there was no relation, no.
Okay, and are there any descendants of the McKenzie family? Are they still living in our area?
Very much so, absolutely. Yeah, and they still run the Standard Oil behind Froggy's fitness gym.
Jim.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so now let's go to Betsy, has a hand raised. Betsy, I have unmuted you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Actually, I have two questions. One is the two houses that you kept pointing out, Brad. Are either one of those still standing? And then the second question is that book by I think you said it was Kay Wilkinson. Any
Yes.
relationship to Jerry?
The two houses are no longer standing on the Tavernier coastline there. I don't know when they were destroyed, or yeah, probably they probably succumbed to a hurricane at some point. And there's no relation between Kay Wilkinson and Jerry Wilkinson, other than they were friends at one point.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And they're both involved in the historical preservation side of the Upper Keys, but same last name, different families.
Love it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so now we have a question that has been typed in. The book you referenced, It Had to Be You. Does it have pictures or just text?
Lots of great pictures, all from the families, from the Wilkinsons and their families. And yeah, let me find some good ones. Yeah, no, it's filled with great old pictures of them and their and hanging out, you know, in their tent house with their friends and shooting rifles and drinking moonshine and catching turtles and all kinds of really cool really old school pictures of what it was like to live here, you know, where you were hunting conch or finding conch and turtles and fishing and crawfish and kind of and really and relying on what was around you. Very interesting book.
And we do have that book in our retail area when we reopen in early June, or if you purchase on Amazon, those proceeds from that book benefits the Keys History and Discovery Center as well. All right, another question here from Cynthia Lewis. Cynthia would like to know, when did electricity come to that portion of Tavernier?
I couldn't get a definitive date. Mid 1930s, about mid 1930s.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Last call for questions. Marie DeLuca has a question. Marie, I've unmuted you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, this is not really a question, it's a comment. Last week on Wednesday, when you had cocktails with the curator, we were talking about Islamorada and the meaning of Islamorada. And actually, Morada means dwelling. So I was using Google Translate, and I'm fascinated by the fact that folklore now has taken over, because then I put in Morada and said dwelling, and then I put Isla space Morada, hoping to get island dwelling, and guess what I got? Purple Isle. So it's amazing how folklore just takes over everything. I couldn't, even though I separated the two, it still came out as purple instead of dwelling. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, also Morado if you spell like Marada with an A is dwelling, Marado with an O is purple.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's, and the whole, is that a Tavernier here, same concept as Purple Isles. You know, it's the same, you know, it's the folklore, the mythology of the story that gets told and retold and retold, and then just takes over. But you know why, for a long time, even the Chamber of Commerce had a, you know, advertised, you know, this as the Purple Isles. They even had a license plate that says "Welcome to the Purple Isles" or "Albury, the Purple Isles." You know, so it's a great, it's a sexy, fun story. It's just not a true story.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question from Mary Jo Kisco. Mary Jo, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Erin. This question is actually for you. Is the southern end of Tavernier where your grandfather or great-grandfather had some lime plantings, or pineapple after they were destroyed by the pineapple fields have been destroyed?
I don't know the timeline with when the pineapple fields were destroyed, but the Albury family homesteaded the southern end of Tavernier in the late 1860s, 160 acres on the southern end of the island, and actually on the northern end of the island of Plantation Key. And actually in the area where Tavernero, the airstrip, is on the north end of Plantation Key, that was one of their lime groves. And they farm predominantly limes and tomatoes. Through the early 60s, we still have records. My great-grandfather kept these little memo books, and he would keep track of what he shipped, how much he shipped, where, how many crates, what quality, that sort of thing. And you notice they go back to about 1917 is the earliest one we have in our family, and it's all limes and tomatoes and produce. Then shifting into 1924, 1925, into the early 30s, the commercial fishing business then picks up, and you see both a mix of farming and fishing in his ledger books.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting.
No problem. Okay, let's see. Any other questions here? I don't see any more hands raised. So I think that is going to do it for us this evening. A couple more notes before we sign off. This program has been recorded, and we will upload it to our YouTube channel, and we'll be sharing that link on our Facebook page as well. At the conclusion of our program, you all will be prompted to take a brief survey about your experience with tonight's presentation. We value your feedback and would love for you to take a moment and complete the survey. The survey will also be sent in a follow-up email in case you'd like to complete it at a later time. Don't forget to tune in to tomorrow's virtual visit with our curator, Brad, via Facebook Live. That's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And then on Friday, our Field Trip Friday, is going to be at the Tavernier Hotel, correct? So Brad will be taking us into the historic downtown commercial district of Tavernier and showing you some of these locations in person. So thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you.